Hi, my name is Matt Fox, and I'm the VP of Product and Engineering here at TopLeft. In this video, I'm going to explain the 4 different Kanban boards that we recommend for project teams. So that'd be for project managers and lead engineers, and also any engineers working on the project in the project environment. I'll also show you exactly how to set those boards up in TopLeft. Now, I'm not going to describe all the details of exactly how to do that on in the app. We have a different video that goes into a bit more detail about how everything works, but this is more to answer the question of which boards do you make. So there are 4 boards that we would recommend. One is a overview of all of your projects. And then we have 3 different boards that show the project tickets, so a more detailed view and showing different variations of that kind of view. So let's go. Okay, so if you're an administrator in the top left, then under boards, you will see the add board option. So go ahead and click there. I'm going to use the ConnectWise for this video, but our Autotask version is very similar. I'll point out where it might be different. So in this board, I'm going to click projects. That's because we're going to make the overview board first of all. So as a name, I'm just going to give it a name, project overview. And on all the other options here on this pane, I'm going to just leave it at the defaults, the card fields, metrics, swim lanes, and ranking. Just going to leave it at the defaults, although you might come back and set a swim lane field. It depends on how many projects you have. Sometimes using a swim lane can make it easier to understand. So we'll come back to that. For filters, we need to choose now where do the projects live in our ConnectWise or in our Autotask. So if you're ConnectWise, you're going to select the project boards that have the projects that you want to see in this case. So in my case, I'm just going to select both of our project boards there. If you're in Autotask, you don't have a equivalent of boards. So you might want to look at the type field and select just that you want to see the client projects type. That might be a good choice for you. Then under columns, this is where we define the life cycle of a project in our environment. So uh, with this board, as well as any other Kanban boards that we're going to make, if you're very familiar with Kanban and you know exactly the life cycle of all of your work and you know what columns to use, go ahead and use those. That's great. Now, if you're coming in, you're a little bit new to this, you haven't seen this before, then we do have recommendations to make this easier. So for the main stages of a project life cycle, here's what you can do. You can just make the first column called new. Second column you could call ready. So the new column would be for things where the customer has signed the agreement for the project, but there's still a bit more project planning that needs to be done before it is really ready for engineers to start. The ready column would be when you have done that project planning, and engineers could actually start it. They haven't started it yet. New in progress would be the next one, and that would be for where the project has been started. Then the next one you could call monitoring, and that would be for where maybe you leave a project open for a week or two just to kind of flush out any of the little issues that might still be that you might find out after you launch everything, or maybe you might have a kind of a customer acceptance phase, for example. So you might have a column for that after in progress, and then finally you end up with a closed column there at the end. So what I need to do now is map the statuses to these columns. So I'll put new in new status column, obviously. Ready, go into ready, in progress, monitoring, and closed. And on hold, I'm going to just leave off and open. I'll put that under new as well. Okay, that's all I got to do here. Let me click save and we'll see what we get. Okay, so here's a good basic overview. I mean, a view like this is already better than what you get in just the list of projects in your PSA. So it makes it easy to see where everything's at in the life cycle of the projects. We've got a few new, ready, then there's one in progress, one monitoring. And if you have a lot of projects, I'd say, 10, 15, 20 projects or so, that gets to be a decent number of projects, and it starts to become harder to understand if you don't use a swim lane. So if you have 15 to 20 or more projects, then you might want to consider using a swim lane. The most common choice for a swim lane would be to use the project manager swim lane, or in Autotask, that would be the lead resource swim lane. That would be useful if you actually have multiple managers or lead resources. If say if you have 20 projects, you might have two or three or four different project managers. And so that would be a very useful swim lane to use. If you just have a single project manager, it's just you and you're the manager on all of the projects, then using the manager swim lane isn't going to be useful. It would just give you one swim lane. In that case, you might instead want to use uh, the company swim lane or account swim lane. And then you would see the projects specified by the company that they're assigned to, and it would make it really easy to see which projects, um, which companies have maybe four or five projects going on at once versus the ones that just have one project at once. So that again, you would see under the swim lane, you'd make that choice there. Now, one thing that we would recommend doing is to set up some notifications on the board to help highlight some of the projects that um, are coming to up to certain important dates. So as an example, your projects have a start and end date. You probably specified in the project in your PSA. So it could be, for example, that in the ready column here, you've got some projects and there's approaching the start date that you told the customer that you'd start. You don't want that to sneak up on you. It's helpful if the software identifies that for you. So and you can do that. So under advanced options, under the ready column, for example, you can see we have the estimated start warning and end warning as well. So if it's ready, meaning we haven't started it yet, we want to warn about when we're supposed to start. So if I put in 7D as an example, that means 7 days. 7 days before the start warning or put a highlight on the projects that are in that column to bring them to my attention so the start date doesn't sneak up on us. So I'll just make that change. And now you can see here on this project, according to the date right now, the start date is within the next 7 days, and so it's highlighting it there in an orange color, meaning it's not a problem yet, but do be aware of this because it's getting close. And you can do the same thing with the estimated end date when it's in progress, right? And if it's in progress, you would want to know, okay, the end date's supposedly coming up. Let's make sure that I'm aware of that by highlighting it when that starts to get close. Okay, so this is a good basic project board. One other thing you might want to do, if you're looking at it from this point of view, is say, I want to drill down into um, see what are the tickets that are part of this project. And right now, there's not a way to do that, just based on how I've configured it. But that is a capability. I just have to set up the ticket boards first, and then we can come back and I'll show you how you can drill into the projects from this sort of view here. So let's go and make some ticket boards. So again, under boards, click Add Board. And this time I'm going to click Tickets. This is in ConnectWise. If you're Autotask, then click the one that says Tasks, because that will show you the details of the projects there. So for this one, I'm going to call this board Project Details. And again, I'm just going to select all of the defaults on this pane, except for the swim lane. I'm going to set to the project because we want to see all of our project tickets by the project that they're part of. On the Filters tab, I'm going to make the same selection as I did on the project board that I just made. So these were my two project boards that I selected. Again, if it's Autotask and you used the client type filter, then go ahead and make that selection here. So all we got to do here. Then we'll go to the Columns tab. So again, this is now specifying the life cycle of a typical project ticket in your system. So again, if you know what you're doing, you've already used Kanban, go ahead and use the columns you want. Otherwise, we do have recommendations for a typical project ticket life cycle. So let me describe that. The first column, we actually recommend, we call that ongoing. So we've found that a lot of MSPs use this pattern. So they put one ticket that's part of every project that they make. Every project has the same ticket. It's just called maybe project management, or it's called meetings or communications or something like that. And it's kind of a catch-all ticket that stays open for the whole duration of the project. And you log time against it. Maybe you email your customers from that ticket or whatever it might be. But it's not a normal ticket, like technical work that an engineer can do. It has a real scope and everybody, an engineer can work on it until it's done and then it goes away. These tickets just stay open the whole duration of the project. And we don't want to show those with the other projects. We want to keep a separate place for that because they're kind of distracting. We don't want to every time we look through the list of the in progress tickets and we see project management there, we have to think, oh, that's just the project management one. I don't want to work. It doesn't bother me that it's still in progress. No, we want to separate that so you don't have to think about it. So we give it its own place. So we just call the column ongoing. In this example, you would you would need to have a status in your PSA for those tickets. So if you probably don't already have that, so you might have to do a little homework, go and make that ticket status in your PSA, and then you'll be able to use it here. And generally, we just make that the first column in the board. And then the second one would be backlog. Those would be for tickets that maybe they've come out of your project ticket, uh, your project templates, and so they exist, but you're not going to do them soon. They could be more than a month out, for example. So we just put those in a backlog. We're not worried that they're not going to be done soon. Then when a ticket starts to you get closer to the time when you need to do it, then we put it in the ready status. That means, as a project manager, I want to start planning for when we're actually going to do this. After that, we do a waiting column. That is for things where the next step on that ticket is outside of the responsibility of the team. It's, maybe the customer needs to respond, maybe a vendor needs to do something like that. The one after that would be scheduled. And that is for things where the next step on that ticket there's nothing to do on that ticket right now. The next step on that ticket happens at a certain time of day in the future. And you know what time of day that is. It should be in somebody's calendar with a service call or a scheduled meeting or something like that. But in any case, today, right now, there's nothing more to do with that ticket. And so we put it in its own place called scheduled. Then we have in progress. That's for things the engineers have started. And then finally, we have completed. Now, do you really need a completed column? It's really personal preference. Some people like to have a place where they can review the things that have been done. Other people say, once it's done, it's done. I don't want to see it anymore. And that's fine. It's really your preference. Just keep in mind, even if you don't want to have a place to review the stuff, if you do want a place for the engineers to drag those tickets from in progress to completed, then obviously you're going to still need that, even if you don't plan to use it for reviewing. You might ask, if you do keep it, you might ask, how long are tickets going to stay in that column? Because we don't want it to just be overloaded with all the tickets that have ever been completed. Tickets stay in TopLeft system for about 24 hours after they've gone to a closed status. After that, they'll get flushed out by default. So so about a day, tickets will stay there. If you did want to have for example, a weekly meeting, so you wanted tickets to actually stay there for a week so that you could review them every week, there is a setting that can be changed that will keep those for a week. So you can just let us know. We'll help you change that. Okay, so that's our recommended columns. Now, I actually don't have a status for ongoing, so I'm just going to delete that column now. And then I'll map the statuses that I do have, I'll map those to the columns. So let's see. New, I'll put it for backlog. Open will be ready. Put on hold for waiting. Scheduled will go in its own column there. In progress, and then a couple of statuses here in completed. Okay, that's it. I'll save the board and we'll see what we get. Okay, so here we go, a very typical project board. You can see that we have a swim lane for each project. For example, here an Azure migration for a certain company, followed by a CRM upgrade for another company, an office move, and so on. So I've got one swim lane for every project that I have, and within that, I can see all of the tickets by their status. So it makes it very, very easy to see what's in progress for a certain project, and not just a certain project, but actually all of our projects. What's a queue of things coming up to do in the ready column, and so on. So there's a lot that this is a very useful visualization, especially because we can see multiple projects at once, which our PSA doesn't do. Now, one thing that is maybe useful to see is to be notified when a ticket has stalled. It's not moving through the workflow as fast as you'd expect, and maybe sat in a certain column for too long. That would be most common to happen in the in progress column. For example, we'd want to know if a ticket has sat in the in progress column for 2 weeks, right? That we don't want that. The customer is going to start wondering what's going on there, and so it'd be useful if that we can be notified about that, and we can. So let me edit this board, and I'll make one change here in the columns. I'll set the age warning field. What that means is that if a ticket has been in that column for longer than the time period that I'm going to specify, it's going to get some highlighting on there to say, hey, pay attention, there's something wrong with this ticket. So I'll put in 2D for 2 days. We don't want tickets to be in the in progress column for longer than 2 days. And I'll save that. Okay, so now we can see here that our tickets that have been in the in progress column for longer than 2 days are now highlighted. The label that says how long they've been there is red. So that's good to pay attention to. That means that there's some problems with this work here. It's getting delayed. That would be a good thing to give your attention to as a project manager. Now, what else can you do here as a project manager? Well, there's a variety of things you can do. First of all, you can drag the tickets between the columns. That will actually change the ticket status for you in your PSA. There's a variety of other data that you can change here under this menu. You can click Edit Ticket, and that'll let you change the summaries, due dates, budget hours, type, subtype item, and other categorization and whatnot. You can manage resources, assign and unassign people. Dispatch means to put it into their calendar and assign somebody. And yeah, and again, monitor things that are problem tickets, like things that are stalled. So that's how a project manager can use a board like this. Let's go on to the next board now. I'm not going to make a brand new board this time. We've done a bunch of good work about how to set up the columns here. So I'm just going to clone this board. So if I edit it, then under Actions, I can click Clone Board. And I'm going to call this one Project Details by Member, because what we're going to do here is change the swim lane to be the member. So we're going to see how these tickets are assigned to the people. So that's actually called the resource swim lane. In Autotask, you'd probably want to choose the primary resource swim lane there. And that's the only changes we make. I'm just going to save this, and we'll see how this arranges the tickets now. So we're actually looking at the exact same tickets as we were before, but they're arranged in a totally different way. They're arranged by who they're assigned to. In fact, the first swim lane here is tickets that have nobody assigned. Then we see a swim lane for our first member, Terry. We got a couple of example users here. We see Joseph and so on. So this is a really good view for a project manager to see how is work actually assigned in your team. You can use it to actually assign the work. Like for example, if I wanted to change who the ticket is assigned to, I can actually drag it and drop it between different swim lanes there, and it will go and reassign it for me. It also lets me see problems about who might be assigned too much right now. Maybe they got too many tickets in progress or too many in their ready column, a long, long queue of work to do. In fact, TopLeft can help identify that sort of problem. Let me show you how we can set up those warnings here. Now under columns, I can edit this WIP max field. That stands for work in progress max. Maximum, and basically that means we don't want to see more than this a certain number of tickets for each person in that particular column. So in fact, for the in progress column, I mean, ideally we see just one ticket in there for each person, but in real life maybe there's 2 or 3. So I'll put 3 in the WIP max column there for the in progress column. Now, by default, that 3 refers to the board as a whole, just 3 tickets in progress across the whole board. That doesn't make much sense with the resource swim lane. So under the general tab under swim lanes, I can actually change that to apply the 3 per person per swim lane. So if I check that, then that's how it behaves. So I'll just save that. And here, now we can see that wherever a member has more than the 3 tickets in progress that I said, now they get a little red indicator here saying, hey, they violated the threshold. They've got too much in progress. Help them through reducing this so they're not working on too many things all at once. If someone has less than the threshold here like that, they'll get it in a green background. So this board is good for seeing, how you're resourcing things, how who's working on what, and if anyone's too busy. It's also really useful for team meetings because if you have a meeting where it's just kind of a quick status update meeting, a daily huddle, for example, you can actually use this board to go through each member of your team in turn, for each swim lane, and very easily they can uh, just talk about tickets that are a problem for them. They're blocked on something, or maybe they just have too much work. So they can point that out, and you just go very quickly through each person by their swim lane. They give a brief report, and it can make that kind of meeting really, really productive. Okay, so that brings us to the fourth and final type of board here. Again, I'm just gonna clone this one. So under actions, I'll clone that board. And again, we're just going to change the title and the swim lane. I'm going to call this the project details by phase and change the swim lane to phase. I am going to clear out the work in progress limit because it doesn't apply so well to this board. And what we're going to see here is a board that actually lists all of the swim lanes for all of the projects that are happening right now. Okay, so now this board actually isn't super useful just as it is. If you browse straight to this board, it would be showing you all the phases for all the projects. Not many people use it like this, but it is useful in another case. This is the one that I was referring to, where we can use it as a way to drill down into the tickets when we're looking at it from the project overview, like this. So what I need to do is just make one change to a setting on this board. So I'll edit it. Under the ticket board field here, or the task board for Autotask, I'm going to find that new board that I made, project details by phase, make that selection there, just save the board. Now notice here that I have a new icon. I have a little magnifying glass icon here. That means I can drill into this project to see the details of the project, and it will go to that board that I selected, the phase swim lane board. So I'll click here to demonstrate how that works. Okay, so notice we are back on the project details by phase board, but we're only seeing the tickets for the one project that I clicked on. So I had clicked on the Azure migration project, and so that's all I'm seeing. I'm seeing the different phases and the tickets within those phases for that one project, the Azure migration project. So you've done work to put your tickets into phases. Here in this example, we've got an investigation, a migration, and a teardown, and a few other phases here. Actually, numerous phases in that one, and so I can see it based on everything that's how it's been set up in phases. So that's the three boards that four boards actually that we recommend for a project environment using TopLeft. Now, let me just add before we're done here, what's the best way for a technician to use these boards? A technician sometimes needs to use it in some of the same ways as a project manager. So they are able to use all the same boards that you are as a project manager. But it is useful if they have kind of a specialized way to do that. And the recommended way here would be to look at the project details board. That's the one that uses the project swim lanes. And when we do that, obviously in this sort of view, without making any changes, they see the tickets that are assigned to everybody. So it's quite a bit of work. Or there's a lot here that's not relevant to the technician, but they can easily change that. They can click on the My Tickets button here, and then they get a view of the board that's only showing them the tickets that they're assigned to, and they're still organized by the project. So it makes it really easy to understand, and just one click and they can see just the things that they are responsible for. So this is a really good way for the technicians to work from, and they can see what they have scheduled or waiting, what they have in progress. They can drag and drop between the different columns there to change the statuses. And one other thing that they should know about is that they can enter time on a board like this. So under this menu here, if they click enter time and notes, then they are able to make time entries on the straight from TopLeft. That goes straight into the PSA. They can also use the timers here. So if they hover over a card like this, you can click to start a timer, and that helps them track their time as well. And that wraps up the boards that we recommend for a project environment. Appreciate you watching.